Welcome to Jammin' with Jason Mefford, a show where we discuss topics relevant to chief audit executives and professionals in audit, risk, and compliance. We discuss the technical and soft skills needed to navigate the minefields of organizations. You hear best practices and practical advice for helping you advance your career, and we'll even talk about music, mindfulness, and psychology, because we can. So sit back and relax while you listen to the #1 podcast in the world for internal auditors, unscripted and unedited. Welcome to another episode of Jamming with Jason. Hey, my friends, it's good to be back with you again this week. Hey, for the last month or so, I've just felt like I wanted to kind of talk to everybody individually. So I've been doing a lot of individual podcasts. We're going to get back to a lot of the interviews and other stuff coming up shortly. But just with a lot of the things that are going on in the world, I just felt like I wanted to kind of talk to all of you about some specific things. So for those of you that really enjoyed the interview segments, those are going to be back very soon. So just hold on to it. In fact, next week, you'll actually have another one of those, and it's a very special episode. So be looking for that this next week. Now, the title of this week is Limitless Learning. And the reason for that is I've actually been reading a book called Limitless, and I'm going to get in and talk more about that here as we get into the episode a little bit further, because there's some information that I've been learning, in this Limitless Learning book that I wanted to share with each of you about how to learn. And we're going to get into that in a little bit more, like I said, here in the episode. Because one of the things that I have found, probably one of the biggest keys to my success in my life and in my career, has been the fact that I am a lifelong learner. I don't just get trained, but I actually learn. And I'm going to share with you here in this episode what that means, a little bit more about some of that, share a little bit, like I said, from the book. And then I'm going to dig in deeper in future episodes and other things to share with you more about that. Now, excuse me, this week is a little bit of a potpourri exercise or episode. Okay, potpourri. And so if you don't know how to spell it, it's kind of a funny sounding word. And it's potpourri. Now, trust me on this. We're going to talk about potpourri for a little bit. And there's a reason for that, because it ties into our limitless learning discussion that we're going to be talking about. Okay. Now, potpourri actually means a mixture of things. And I'm going to get into that here a little bit more and kind of share a story with you and kind of why I'm talking about that today. But for those of you that are auditors, what you may have noticed as well is now there is a little E symbol next to the podcast and next to each of the episodes. And here's the reason for that. I'm actually a pretty colorful guy, and I'm colorful in a lot of ways. In fact, sometimes I use some strong or adult language, okay? Now, I've been holding myself back on the podcast, not maybe being fully me, because sometimes I use those words, okay? And I decided that I would go ahead and mark the podcast as explicit, okay? Because, again, as I get excited, as I get talking, I might say some words like shit or fuck or don't be an asshole, okay? And realize that everybody who's listening to this podcast should be an adult, should be, familiar with, okay with it. Don't mean to offend anybody by that. But like I said, I wanted to make sure and put that on the podcast going forward in case I say any of those words, that you won't be offended, that you'll realize that that's what it is. And again, it's more for me just so that I can be more authentic with you. And I don't feel like I have to hold back on the podcast and think about, which words can I use and which words can't I use? Okay, so let's get back to talking about potpourri. Now, potpourri, again, like I said, it's a funny word. I like it because I like the alliteration of it. But let me tell you a little story. Most people don't actually use potpourri now, but like I said, the definition of it is a mixture of things. Now, when I was growing up, we had some of the air fresheners and things like that, but my mother did not actually use that most of the time. Instead, she would actually make her own potpourri. So usually a potpourri is, different, flower petals, maybe spices, other things like that. And what she used to do was put it all together in a pot. And she would simmer that pot on the stove. And so, as it would go through and simmer, all of the essences of that potpourri would come out. So depending on what she put into it, sometimes it'd smell like cinnamon, sometimes it would smell like flowers, depending on what she actually put into it. And so again, it was kind of a reminder and a shout out to my mother who passed away many years ago, about potpourri, and for me actually just kind of remembering some of those times and those smells that used to be in our house. Now, why am I talking about this? Because again, as I told you, this is going to tie into our discussion today about limitless learning. So remember potpourri, we're going to come back to it. Potpourri, Potpourri, is how you spell potpourri. Okay. Now, as I told you earlier, one of the things that I think has been a key to my success is the lifelong learning attitude that I have. Okay. And so I am always learning. Every single day I am learning. Now, I read usually at least 1 to 2 different books each week. In this last week, I was reading this book called Limitless. Now, it just came out about a week ago. And so it's actually, the title of it is Limitless, Upgrade Your Brain, Learn Anything Faster, and Unlock Your Exceptional Life. And it's written by Jim Quick. And Jim is fabulous. He is probably one of the leading experts on learning, on speed reading. I mean, this is a guy who coaches top level actors. So, when you go to the big movies and you see all these big, fancy movie stars, he's one of the people that helps them learn their lines and gain their confidence for being able to actually make the movies. Okay, so the guy knows what he's talking about and has a very interesting experience actually in his own life of how he has learned. And so again, as I'm reading that book, I want to share more of what's in that book, as well as some of the things that I've done over time with learning. Because again, as someone who teaches other people, I mean, I own 2 different training companies. One of the reasons why is, as I've told you before, I love to learn and I love to help people learn. Okay. And so we're going to talk a little bit about that today, because I want to get into some of the how that you do that. Now, in Jim's book, one of the things that he has is a model, which I think is fabulous. And he does some very interesting things in the book. And as I think I said, that there's a link down in the show notes for you to go be able to look up and get that book. Because I think, again, for anybody who's serious about learning, this is a book that you must read. Okay. Now, in the book, he talks about one of the models that he has in the book is he breaks things down into these models, or kind of little chunking that I'm going to talk about here in just a minute. And one of the great models that's in his book, he has 3 concentric circles. So it makes a Venn diagram. Okay. And there's 3 aspects to kind of this limitless learning that he's talking about here. And the 3 are mindset, motivation, and methods. Okay. So there's 3 M's, 3M, think of Post-it notes, 3M to help you remember. There's 3 M's, and they are mindset, motivation, and methods. Okay. Now, what you might not have realized is what I just did for you right there is help you to learn and remember those 3 M's, right? 3 M's. How do you remember 3 M's? Think of it or visualize a Post-it note. 3M is a company that makes Post-it notes. There's 3 M's in this model: mindset, motivation, and methods. Okay, so if you're taking notes, you should have already been writing that down. And if that's the case, you've already started to really learn this concept. Now, mindset gets into what we need to be learning and kind of the mindset of getting us right and ready for learning. And like I said, I'm going to get into this later in future episodes or trainings that I do, because this is an aspect of learning that is so very important for you. If you are not in the right mindset when you are trying to learn, it will be very difficult for you. And in fact, there's some different things, that I teach in my multisensory learning course about ways to slow down your brain activity, get your brain waves to the right frequency so that you can actually absorb the information better. But again, it's about the mindset, and mindset is about kind of what you should be learning as well, right? So what is going to be relevant to you to learn? The motivation side of it is more about the why. If you're not motivated to learn, it's not going to stick, right? If you hated going to school, you probably didn't learn a lot because you weren't motivated to be there. You weren't motivated to learn, okay? It doesn't mean you're stupid if you didn't do well in school, but what you are motivated for, you will learn better. So let me give you an example. One of my nephews, he was not a very good student, okay? He did not score well in school because he wasn't really motivated by what they were teaching him there. But I remember, that we were having some family gathering, and we were all sitting around, and we started talking about it. I believe we started talking about baseball. And it was some sport. It was either baseball or football that we started talking about. And all of a sudden, this kid who, again, didn't get very good grades at school, but as we started talking, all of a sudden, his mouth opened and this trivia came out. He knew which teams had won, which years, World Series or Super Bowl. He knew different players from different teams. This kid was a wealth of knowledge. Now, even though he didn't do well at school, he had learned that information because he was motivated and interested in the sports aspect of it, okay? So again, that's why motivation is so important when you're learning. If you don't understand why you're learning it, and if you're not motivated to learn it, it's always going to be difficult for you, okay? So that's mindset, that's motivation, right? Now, the last one is the methods. The methods are how you actually do it. These are some of the skills that you need to develop if you are going to learn anything faster and unlock your exceptional life. Okay, so a few that he goes through in the book around visualization. Now, again, if you remember, I just kind of tricked you on this, right? As we were talking about the 3 M's, I told you to visualize Post-it notes. And the reason for that is visualizing something like a Post-it note to help you remember 3M, and 3M stands for mindset, motivation, and methods. That is a method for you to be able to learn quicker, okay, through visualization. Rote memory doesn't work as well, but things like visualization do. So there's an example of that, right? Now, you've also heard me repeat, and so through repetition, I have said mindset, motivation, and methods several times. So again, by now, you should know what are the 3 M's? It's mindset, motivation, and methods. Now, let's go back to the potpourri that I was talking about before. right? So we said, usually it kind of means a mixture of things. And a lot of times that mixture, at least in the older ways that it was used here in the US, it was a mixture of, good smelling things that people would usually put together, boil on their stove to be able to make their home smell nice. Okay. It's a mixture of things. How do you remember potpourri? It's a funny, it's a funny word to spell, right? But if you vision in your mind, so just close your eyes if you can, or envision a pot pouring. So a pot that is pouring is potpourri, okay? And actually how you spell potpourri, pot, P-O-T, pour, P-O-U-R, with an R-I at the end of it. So having that visualization of a pot pouring is a way for you to remember not only what potpourri is, but actually how to spell it as well. And that little act of visualization will help you learn it much more than trying to sit there and memorize it in kind of a rote memorization standpoint. So again, that's one of the methods that's kind of in the book that he teaches. So again, as I said before, go out and get this book if you actually want to learn. Another one that he did a lot through the book, and he didn't talk about it this way, but I call it chunking. So chunking is a way of kind of instilling or bringing things down into bite-sized kind of packets that we can actually absorb in our brain. And usually we can absorb between 3 to 5 things at a time. And so if you chunk things down into something between 3 and 5, you're going to be able to remember and learn it quicker. So again, I told you, his model has how many different aspects to it? 3. Do you suppose there's a reason why it's 3? Because humans remember threes. It's easier to remember 3M, and 3M is mindset, motivation, and methods, okay? Another example, in the United States, our phone numbers are 10-digit numbers. Now, if you try to memorize a 10-digit number, it's difficult to do unless you chunk it down. And so again, usually in the US, our phone numbers are 3 digits, dash, 3 digits, dash, 4 numbers. Why? You can remember a series of 3, and of 4. You can remember those 3 series easier than you can a full string of 10 digits. Okay, so that's an example of chunking. So if you're trying to learn, there's a method to be able to help you do that more. Now, another one that he talks about is speed reading. And he actually has a whole course on this, on how to actually learn to read faster, because the faster you can read, obviously, the more information you can take in as well. And in fact, there's been a lot of studies that have been done that when you learn how to read faster, you actually comprehend and retain the information more than if you're reading it slower as well. Okay, so that's a couple of, some of the things, at least to begin with, from this book that I was so excited about that I wanted to share with you. And there's lots more in the book. So like I said, I would encourage you, if you're interested in this, go out and get his book. I'm not getting anything for this. I'm just giving you the link. But I think the guy is fabulous, and I want you to learn, okay? Now, it's a little bit of a potpourri, I told you. So, that's a part kind of on learning. Now, before, I've talked to you also about knowledge, skills, abilities, and experience. So if you think about CASE, K-A-S-E, that reminds you knowledge, abilities, skills, and experience. Okay, now normally we talk about it from a learning standpoint of knowledge, skills, abilities, and experience. Okay, now training provides you with knowledge and skills. Knowledge is information about the topic. Skills are things like these methods that I just talked about. But training by itself, just the knowledge, just the skills, you've only got half of the learning equation. So if you really want to actually learn, right, you need training, but you also need to add the abilities and the experience with it as well. So how do you do that? Well, one of the best ways to do that is belonging to a community where you can actually share and learn from others. It's a back and forth kind of a conversation that happens afterwards. Now, again, one of the tricks to learning is when you learn something, if you teach or explain that to someone else, that gets you further up the retention and the learning scale. Okay. So, again, being involved in communities where you can have these discussions with other people helps you to, gain those abilities and that experience by sharing it. And also, as part of the abilities, it's not only the practicing of those skills, excuse me, developing those habits, but it's also in some of the reflection. Because a lot of times, what happens in these communities is someone will say something and you stop and go, huh, well, I never really thought of it that way before. And stopping and reflecting on some of the things that you learn allow you to actually integrate that learning better and deeper into your brain. Okay. So, again, one of the tips from the learning standpoint is to join communities of like-minded people so that you can discuss and talk about some of these things as well. Again, standard regular training, you go to a training or you do something online, you learn the knowledge and skills, and it just stops there. That's one of the reasons why CRIS Academy is a learning platform, not just a training company, because they're interested in actually having you learn and apply and get that experience as well. And one of the ways, like I said, that you can do that is through communities. Okay. Even this podcast, those of you that are listening each week, you are learning some things. But usually, again, podcasts can only give you some of those knowledge or skills. It's still up to you to be able to take what I'm talking about and actually start to develop your abilities to apply it and to get experience. Okay, it's still up to you to do some of that. Now, again, podcasts are one-way communication. I'm sitting here in my home recording studio talking to you. You're listening to this at some point in the future in wherever you happen to be. I'm talking, you're listening. It's one-way communication. Now, with community, you get two-way communication, right? Would it be helpful to actually be able to talk to me and bounce ideas back and forth and actually interact with me and develop a relationship with me? Of course it would, right? And I'm not just saying that because of me, but it's beneficial for you in anything that you're learning, right? So again, imagine if you're learning physics, okay? You're in a physics, college course, you've got a book, you're listening to the professor's lecture. Okay, great. That's teaching you some knowledge. But how valuable would it be to sit down with that professor or pick Albert Einstein's brain? What if you could be part of a community where Albert Einstein was there, actually answering questions and saying things and helping you learn as well as just reading some textbook? That's what community can give you. Okay, that's what I'm trying to get across to you. Now, at a time when we are socially isolated, a lot of us are socially isolated right now. We all need community even more. And you've heard me say that before. And what I'm going to tell you is I saw again today on LinkedIn, and I just think this is stupid, but it's already a decision that's been made. The IIA is shutting down some of their specialized LinkedIn groups. Okay. And so, again, I disagree with that, but it's their decision to make. We need community. And so, again, if you're getting shut out of some of those places, you need to find a community of like-minded people where you can hang out and develop those abilities and experience in addition to your knowledge and skills. Okay. So again, If you're the kind of person that would like to hang out with people like me, would you like to know where I hang out? Well, why don't I tell you? Okay. Again, if you want to connect more with me, a couple places, LinkedIn is one of those. I'm on LinkedIn every single day. If you connect with me, if you let me know who you are, if you let me know that you listen to the podcast, if you ask questions, I'm going to answer. There is a real person on the other side of those direct messages in LinkedIn, and his name is Jason, and he looks a lot like me, okay? Because it is me. So that's one of the areas where I'm at. Now, again, that's one-on-one, but it is, bilateral communication at that point. Another place where I hang out is the C-Risk Academy Facebook group. C-Risk Academy now has a Facebook group, again, to allow like-minded people to come together in a group and be able to interact with each other, ask questions, get answers, learn from each other. And so I hang out in that Facebook group. So if you'd like to become a member of that Facebook group and interact with me, then join the C-Risk Academy Facebook group, okay? There's a link down below. All you have to do is sign up for a free account, and the link is down below. But as long as you have a free account on C-Risk Academy, you can join the Facebook group and be able to interact with me and with other people in the internal audit, risk, and compliance space. So that's another one of the places that I hang out. Now, if you're a chief audit executive, another place I hang out is in the Chief Audit Executive Forum, right? So this is it's a forum group. It's only for chief audit executives. So you must be a chief audit executive to become a member of this. Excuse me. But this is another place where I hang out. And so again, if you're a chief audit executive that wants to hang out with like-minded people, other chief audit executive peers, and myself, the Chief Audit Executive Forum is where you can do that. And there's a link below for that. Another place where I hang out is the CIA discussion group. So I created a discussion group on LinkedIn, and this is for people who are studying for the Certified Internal Auditor exam. Lots of people have questions about that. They want to be able to interact with other people, maybe create study groups and do other things like that. So I have a group on LinkedIn that is the CIA discussion group. So again, if you're that kind of person that is studying for the CIA exam, you'd like some community around that and like to know and interact with others who are also studying for the CIA exam, there's another community where you can join. And again, the link is down below. Whew. All right, my friends. Any questions? Well, if you have questions, you know where to find me, okay? I hope this was helpful. And like I said, I'm going to continue to talk more about learning because again, I think this is one of the biggest keys to your success. And unfortunately, most people aren't actually taught how to learn. In school, we're told to memorize things. That is not the best way to learn, okay? And in fact, a lot of the people that give training and are teachers, unfortunately, even though they've been trained a lot of them don't actually understand some of how the brain works and some of these better ways to help people learn. Okay, and we went through a couple of them today. So again, you've got some takeaway skills, right, that we talked about today. I had some silly examples about potpourri, and you can remember potpourri and how to spell it by a pot pouring, imagining a pot pouring, P-O-T-P-O-U-R-R-I, potpourri, okay? I hope that was helpful, my friends. And again, I do care about all of you that are out there in our profession. I want to make sure that you know that and that what I'm doing actually comes from my heart because I want to help our profession and I want to help you. Okay, sometimes I know I probably sound a little crazy, but that's all right. Like Billy Joel said, you know, I may be crazy, but it may just be a lunatic you're looking for. At least that's kind of what I hope for, right? Had to bring in some sort of music to the end of this episode as well. So with that, my friends, go out, have a fabulous next week. Again, if you're interested in lifelong learning, I would highly suggest that you download Jim Quick's book, his new book called Limitless, Upgrade Your Brain, Learn Anything Faster, and Unlock Your Exceptional Life. And read through that. And again, if you're really serious about being a lifelong learner and joining a community of people that are like-minded, I gave you some examples of that during the podcast, and the links are below. So with that, my friends, keep rocking the audit world, and I'll catch you on a future episode of Jamming with Jason. See ya. And that's a wrap. Thanks for listening to today's episode of Jamming with Jason. Keep on rocking in the audit world. Have a great rest of your day, and I'll catch you later on the next show. If you'd like to earn continuing professional education for listening to today's episode, head on over to C-Risk Academy at ondemand.criskacademy.com. And that's C as in the letter C, riskacademy.com. Not only do you get a CPE certificate, but you also will have access to the video version of today's show. The views and opinions expressed on this show are that of the individuals and not of their respective organizations.